Hello everybody, Brad the Guitarologist here, and today's video I'm going to show a couple of unusual Gibson guitars from the late Norlin era. The one on the top here I think was supposed to be like a fuchsia color originally. It's changed a little bit over the years, but this is the model known as the Futura. You won't see a whole hell of a lot of those. In the late 70s, Norlin Gibson's parent company, hey buddy, made a couple funky models, including these two. This one seemed to be kind of the sister model for the Moderne. You can look up specs. I'll put some details down in the description if you guys want to read more about these models, but I'm just going to kind of look at them here and admire them. I had these in for setup, and at the end of a setup I might give them a little bit of a tone test. Interesting pickups. I'm not sure if these are original or not. I'm guessing no, because they don't really look like any Gibson pickups that I'm aware of. But that doesn't mean that they're not original. I can check them out while I'm setting this thing up. But you can see here it's got some it's got a lot of finish checking. See all the lines running through the finish, and you can see here kind of the pinkish color. That this thing was originally. You can see it a little better here as well. It looks like it was worn down here, maybe somewhat down to the pink again, and in various places. But a very interesting guitar and a very interesting finish for sure. This model also is a set neck model, but it looks a little bit more like a neck through model, something like you know, what they were doing sort of with the BC Riches and things of the 70s. 70s was a really cool experimental time as far as Gibson goes, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you know, the Norlin era gets a lot of flack from people. I think a lot of pinky out kind of elitists in the guitar collecting community sort of thumb their noses at these Norlin era guitars, but I couldn't really disagree more. I think you know, of course the quality wasn't the best, but of their entire era. But I mean, do you really want to pay $200,000-300,000 for a 50s Les Paul? You know, I don't think so. Even if you go to the early 60s, I mean, that stuff is so prohibitively expensive for the most part for most people. As you see the serial number here, this one I believe is an 83. We have an 8, and I think it's that number. That's the year, 83. But yeah, that stuff is so prohibitively expensive. You know, most of definitely the 50s and the 60s era stuff that, you know, the 70s are what most people can reasonably sort of afford. Even that, some of this stuff is getting out of hand, but you know, I really can't find a whole lot of fault, to be honest, with the Norlin era. I mean, granted, they're not using the old growth mahogany that they were in the 50s, and some of the quality control stuff slipped a little bit, but overall, I mean, these are great playing guitars. Let's take a look at this other one here. This is an S1 model. S1, they made a couple different models with these single coils and bolt-on necks, and this is the S1 model. You see the harmonica bridge here. These pickups are the most interesting thing to me about this model. That, and also the body wood. I think this is supposed to be maple. Yeah, this is maple, I believe. But it's a 3-piece solid maple body. In other words, it's not a sandwich body. Each piece goes all the way through. So it's a 3-piece body, but it's solid all the way through, not a sandwich. And pretty heavy. This thing probably weighs close to 9 or 10 pounds. But the pickups are really interesting. If you look at them real closely, you can see the windings within the pickup, and you can see also that that little white cap and the little white bottom on these pickups are actually embedded inside of like a lucite or clear plastic shell. And it looks like they're wax potted. You can see those bubbles right there on that one. See the bubbles? I think that's bubbles in the actual wax. And then there's some bubbles on this next one too. See there, the bubbles? So really interesting that how they put these together, where you can see the windings with the blade style pickups and the wax potting like that. So cool. I mean, yeah, if you want to be like everybody else, go get an SG and or a Les Paul or a Strat or a Telecaster. But if you want something different, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the Gibson catalog that wasn't necessarily the most sought after stuff, and still isn't really for collectors. But that's precisely why you might want to seek some of this stuff out, because it's killer playing instruments for a lot less money. But you can see here this strange sort of headstock shape. I'm not even sure what this shape would be called. But this is actually an improvement, to be honest, over their other headstock shape, because both of these are technical improvements. Because if you'll notice, this one doesn't pitch back nearly as far as like a Les Paul would, for one. And secondly, the strings go straight to the post on every one of these, straight across. There's none of this. There's none of this diving over at an angle to the post. This one is a lot straighter as well. You see the angle here? That's about the most extreme angle you get, and that's not really that extreme at all. The neck on this one has a scarf joint right there, which you may or may not be. There we go. Here, finally focused. You can see the scarf joint right there, which is something you don't see a whole lot on Gibsons, but this model apparently has them. Gibson Deluxe tuners, made by Clouson. I'm not sure about the serial numbers. Some of the serial numbers get a little bit foggy, but I think this is probably mid to late 70s, sort of in the 77 era, probably around the time I was born, in fact. But yeah, a couple of cool guitars. Like I said, I'm going to do setups on these, and we may come back and also do a bit of a demo for each one. Okay, we have this Gibson S1 out on the bench, and I thought since we did have it, we might as well take a look at the electronics. Give us an opportunity to take a look at those. You see here a very odd switch, and I have not plugged this thing in yet, and I haven't looked at a wiring diagram or anything. This is my first look at this, and just first impressions, this is an odd switch because it's only a two-way switch. You can't go, it looks like a three-way from the top, but it's not your typical Gibson three-way switch. There's a bar there on this side that blocks the switch from going one way, and it would do nothing anyway because all your contacts are over here. And it looks like there are 1, 2, 3 contacts that get changed as this switch is switched. So there's a lot of switching going on with just the flip of one switch right there. We have another switch over here, which works in conjunction with the other switch. Here are the pots. One of the things I noticed right off the bat is that this grounding lug was just hanging freely inside the guitar, and I think that's supposed to be underneath the jack here, so we will fix that while we're in here. Also notice that the pot codes date to 52nd week of 1975. At least that one does. This one has a different sort of pot code. It's a 137 for CTS, but then there's a 76 and then nothing after that. And I don't think that's not a case of solder going over the numbers, or maybe it is, and I'm just not noticing it. I can't really tell, but I'm guessing that's probably a 76 pot code. So that jives with the general time frame for the guitar, but somebody's definitely been in here before, because this is obviously not right. So we're going to make that right while we're in here. And just to get a look at the these oddball pickups as well, it looks as if this plastic kind of, they have like a plastic lucite sort of whatever that's made of, sort of a trough shape, and then they set the electronics down inside of it during manufacturing, and then they just poured epoxy in there, and you can see the bubbles of epoxy right there. But this stuff is hard as a rock, and if you ever broke any of these leads off that are leading down into there, you'd have quite a time fixing any of these pickups. A lot of times with pickups you can take them apart, rewind them, and all that sort of thing. But with something like this, man, you'd have a real hard time. You might even be just better off trying to make a mold and just reproduce the pickup from scratch than try to rewind one of these things, because looks like an absolute nightmare. I'm not even sure how you would go about doing that. Maybe somebody who's into pickup rewinding could chime in on that one. But that would be pretty much a death sentence if one of these, as far as I'm concerned, that would be a death sentence if one of these went bad. That looks like the only drawback. But of course, maybe it doesn't really matter, because being encased in that much epoxy would just prevent them from going bad ever anyway. So I guess as long as you didn't break the leads, you'd be okay. But anyway, yeah, there's the underside of the pickups, and there's there are the electronic wiring in general for this S1. We might as well also go ahead and look at the body route since we're in here. And you can see what I mean by the wood all being solid. The grain continues through. This is all it's all solid. And it shows when you pick up these guitars. These have some heft to them. Alright, so while we had this thing out, we would show the switching on this thing and how it works. Let's see, let me grab a screwdriver here. Right now we have this switch in the up position, and we have this one on number 1. And we're getting signal through there, and not there. So that's these two pickups in that position. The second position, not there. We've got signal there and there. So the second position is these two. So those are kind of that one and that one are kind of your quack positions. This one, let's see, we've got Nick, all 3 of them. So that one is all 3. So you've got a quack position there, and all 3 there. And this one should be, no, that's the neck and the bridge together in that position. Now if I switch this over, this is just a quick way to get your bridge pickup to being on. All 4 of these positions are the same. It's just the bridge position and alone. So weird switching system on this thing. Okay, moving along a little further on the setup for this S1, and we've got some high frets. So we're only able to set the action so low before we start fretting out in various places on the fretboard. If you only had 1 or 2 high frets, it's possible to come in here and just file down 1 fret, or even use your fret hammer and just tap the fret down, and then basically be done with it. As it is, though, we have high frets in several locations. The way to check for high frets, use a tool such as this. This is a high fret finding tool. I will put the tools used in this video down in the description, so if you need one of these tools for your own work, you'll be able to find it a little easier. Stuart McDonald makes these, but if I find an alternative that's a little less expensive, I will link that one as well. But basically what you do is you put, this has 4 different sides, and the reason it has these 4 sides is because the frets are spaced different spaces. As you move up the fretboard, you're going to need to come to the next size, and so forth. As you get way up the fretboard, you're going to need the longest ones to check for high frets. But the way you do that basically is you come down here like so. You put your tool here and you rock it back and forth to see if you have any gap there. It's going to be kind of hard to see, I know, because the lighting is not really ideal at the moment. Let's see if I can get a... Here we go. Maybe this will help some. As you can see, I'm wiggling this thing back and forth, and it is actually moving a little bit. So this fret in the middle is higher than the 2 surrounding it. And that may not be the case across the entire fret. Now right here it's pretty level. Trying to wiggle it doesn't produce anything. But by the time I get back over here on this other side, this part of the fret is a little higher than the surrounding frets as well. So this is a high fret on both ends, but not in the middle. Again, if this was a case where it's only maybe 1 or 2 spots on the fretboard, I could come in and tap those down or just file them individually. But as is, what we're going to have to do is level the frets off. And I'm going to actually use, rather than a fret leveling tool like this, which has a straight bottom, this is actually good for some things. But I think what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use a radius block, and I'm going to level the frets with a radius block. Checking the radius is the first thing we want to do. Right here I have a 12-inch radius block. I'm not sure. Yeah, there you go. This one's a 12-incher. And we will check that and see if the radius matches. This 12-inch radius block, if you can see here along the edges, it doesn't quite match up. If I lay it on the fret, I can rock it back and forth, and it's not following the contour of the fret or the fretboard. Actually, the fret dives down quicker on the end, so what I'm going to need is something a little closer, maybe perhaps to a 10. Let's try a 10. Alright, here's the 10-inch radius block. But as you can see, it still doesn't quite follow the contours along the edges. So we're going to need something a little smaller still. Here's a 9.5-inch radius block. As you can see, it still doesn't appear to be quite perfect. As a matter of, I don't know if you're going to be able to see that or not. It's real close though, real close. So this actually might be the value we need, but just to check, let's go ahead and grab our 7.25 inch radius block and set it on here and see what it looks like. Yeah, as I suspected, you can see here in the middle where you have a gap in the middle with a 7.25. So this is a way, that's well, not way too much, but it's more than we need radius wise. So we're going to go with this 9.5. I don't have anything between those two values anyway, so 9.5 looks really close. So we're going to use this and level our frets, and then we'll come back and crown and polish them. Okay, we have all the frets addressed, and everything's looking pretty good as far as that's concerned. Got everything pretty much tuned back up. A couple things left to do. Need to adjust the truss rod, and also there's a little hitch right here on the nut on the D string. I'll show you what I mean. Pull some slack out. Hear that little ting? What it's doing is it's building up tension here, and it's getting caught in the nut slot. So we're going to come in here with a nut slotting tool and just ever so slightly widen out the nut right there at that point. We're going to be careful not to deepen it any, just widen it out a little bit. What that's going to do is that's going to prevent that little, it's going to prevent this string from catching like that. And anytime we're doing something like this, we want, again, I'm just kind of eyeballing this, I'm freehanding it. But what I want to do as I'm using this nut slotting tool is I want to make sure that I don't slot this thing straight on necessarily. I want to slot it at a slight angle toward and downward also toward the post, because the post is actually angled backwards. So rather than coming straight like this, where I'm pointing basically at the end of the headstock, I want to angle my tool where I'm pointing at the post and down toward the post as well. So again, I'm just going to rock it back and forth slightly, and again, the goal here is to get that little catchiness out of that nut slot. I don't want to deepen it really any. I just want to kind of round the sides of that slot. We'll see where that's gotten us. A lot of people also use a product called nut sauce. Not a single slip on that one, so I think we're good to go on as far as that goes. Let's just adjust the truss rod, and I think we might be ready to give this thing a demonstration. Okay, we're going to give these guitars a short test, and we'll test them out through a 1967 Fender Bandmaster head that's been converted into a 112 combo. Alright, that was the Futura. Now here is the S1. And we'll start out in the bridge position. So yeah, that's a 1970s Gibson S1 and a 1983 Gibson Futura. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Please hit the subscribe button to get more videos like this in the future. And for now, y'all take care.